Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a seriously fascinating breakdown by Professor Zhang about the most powerful, yet entirely unseen man in the Middle East right now. It is a massive geopolitical puzzle, and honestly, it completely challenges all of our basic assumptions about power, silence, and strategy.
Okay, let's dive straight into the absolute mystery at the center of this current crisis. Iran has a new supreme leader, and he has, well, vanished. Right now, at this exact moment, the guy holding one of the most consequential jobs on the entire planet is someone who hasn't given a single speech, hasn't stepped onto a stage, and hasn't shown his face to a camera since the day he took power. Literally everyone is asking, where in the world is Mojtaba Khamenei?
Now, to understand why this is such a big deal, we have to look at the transition machinery of the Islamic Republic, which, by the way, worked exactly as it was designed to. After Ali Khamenei died and was buried at one of the holiest sites in Shia Islam, which was a clear move to elevate him to near sainthood, his second son, Mojtaba, was immediately named successor. Now, this is a man who spent decades completely in the shadows, quietly building up these immense networks inside the Revolutionary Guard and intelligence services. And yet the second he actually takes power, right in the middle of a war, he gives the world absolute, total silence. No inauguration, no broadcast, absolutely nothing.
And here is where Professor Zhang's analysis points out a huge trap that Western observers fall right into. You see, in the West, we are totally hardwired to believe that visibility equals power, right? A president gives a primetime address, a prime minister stands at a podium. So if a leader goes totally silent, Western logic just assumes they're weak, paralyzed, or hiding in fear. But Zhang's research suggests Iran runs on a completely different operating system. In their logic, hiddenness isn't fear at all. It's actually a form of supreme legitimacy.
To really wrap our heads around this, Professor Zhang points us to this core theological concept. In Shia Twelver belief, the absolute highest form of authority is the 12th Imam, who went into what's called occultation or hiddenness over 1,000 years ago. The doctrine says he's the true ruler of the world, and he governs from total concealment. So by stepping entirely out of the public eye, Mojtaba Khamenei isn't signaling weakness to his people. Actually, it's quite the opposite. He is stepping into the oldest, most deeply respected symbolic role that their entire civilization knows. For them, the most powerful authority in the universe is exactly the one you cannot see.
But wait, the source material makes it clear that this isn't just about theology. It works in perfect tandem with cold, hard security logic. It's about sheer survival. Just look at the recent decapitation campaign led by US and Israeli forces. Years ago, they started with military commanders. Then, months ago, they shifted to nuclear scientists. And just days ago, the strikes reached all the way to the top. When your adversaries have proven they can find and kill absolutely anyone who becomes visible, well, the most rational thing a new leader could possibly do is disappear. He totally denies his opponents a schedule, a location, and a stage.
So the really crucial takeaway here is how these two realities, the theology and the security logic, reinforce each other flawlessly. In almost any other country, a leader hiding for his life looks incredibly weak. But from this specific perspective, hiding isn't weakness. The new leader gets to be physically untouchable from bombs and symbolically untouchable from criticism at the exact same time. It is a massive amount of strength masquerading as what Western headlines are currently calling weakness.
Okay, but I know what you're probably thinking. This raises a huge, practical question on the ground. Power still has to be exercised, right? Decisions have to be made every single day. So if the guy at the top of the pyramid is completely quiet, who is actually running this war?
Well, the answer proposed here is that invisibility isn't just a symbolic shield. It is a highly active strategy. Think about it. When the supreme leader says absolutely nothing, everyone below him has to guess his will and act as if they already have his blessing. In a wartime revolutionary state, silence is definitely not a brake pedal. It is a full-blown accelerator. It pushes initiative downward, which instantly empowers the hardliners who want to escalate things, simply because there's no visible leader around to contradict them or tell them to back down.
According to this source, this dynamic creates two entirely contradictory realities happening on the ground at the exact same time. You've got the visible track, basically the theater. This is the Iranian president, the diplomats, mediators flying in from Qatar and Pakistan trying to save nuclear talks. But then you have the invisible track, the reality. This is the Revolutionary Guard, military strikes in the Strait of Hormuz, and the US slamming sanctions right back into place. The people talking peace, they don't have the final authority. The person with the final authority is silent.
Let's put ourselves inside the mind of an Iranian hardliner for a second. You are hearing all these diplomats talk about peace, sure, but you're also watching oil sanctions get reimposed and bombs physically dropping around you. You'd probably draw a pretty stark conclusion.
Negotiation is just a trap designed to keep you talking while your enemy reloads. And with the Supreme Leader staying totally silent, there's literally nobody to overrule that dangerous mindset.
And here is a detail from Zhang's research that is just brilliant. Notice how this exact same strategy of invisibility is being applied to Iran's other most valuable asset, its nuclear program. The Supreme Leader is invisible, denying the enemy a physical target. And the nuclear program? Also invisible. IAE inspectors are locked out, centrifuges are buried deep underground. The state took its two greatest assets and just made them vanish, forcing the entire world to try and negotiate against a shadow.
The big implication here is that we are absolutely not watching chaos unfold. According to the analysis, this is a highly calculated, deeply intentional doctrine. The Iranian state has carefully studied exactly how it's being hunted by its adversaries, and they've collectively decided that their ultimate defense mechanism is to become entirely unseeable. So what is this calculated silence actually saying? According to the source material, it's broadcasting three very specific messages to the world. Message number 1 goes straight to Washington and Tel Aviv, and it is stark. You cannot kill your way to victory. You just spent immense resources trying to reach the top of our pyramid, and the second you did, the top dissolved into smoke. There's no single man or single stage left to bomb. You are now fighting a completely faceless system.
Message number 2 is aimed right at their regional neighbors, the Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. The warning here is crystal clear. Do not bet on a funeral. Do not assume for 1 second that this regime is collapsing just because you can't see the leader on TV. If you place your chips on an imminent collapse right now, you are going to lose that wager.
And the third message? That one is entirely internal, directed at Iran's own people and political factions. The silence projects an unbroken, enduring spiritual line of succession. It's essentially saying, the guardianship continues. Rally together. Do not scatter. It's a really clever mechanism to enforce unity by leaning heavily on a cultural and religious reverence for the unseen that is already deeply embedded in their society.
Now let's trace exactly why having an invisible decider makes a real, binding peace deal structurally impossible. Think about it. Diplomacy fundamentally requires a decider. Sure, a diplomat can propose a great agreement, and an envoy can physically sit down at the table to sign it. But if the hidden true authority remains completely silent, that envoy's signature is practically worthless. The silent leader can step in and overrule them at any given moment. You just can't shake hands with someone who isn't there. Okay, to be completely thorough here, let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's steal the other side's argument. What if the Western analysts hit the nail on the head? What if the new leader isn't playing some brilliant 4D theological chess? What if he truly is struggling, incredibly weak, and just unable to command authority? I mean, it is entirely possible that this whole hereditary handoff is a total mess behind the scenes. The Council of Experts or the hardcore Revolutionary Guard commanders might not fully trust a guy who simply inherited his power rather than earning it through blood and grit out in the field. We could very well be looking at a highly contested succession happening behind closed doors. But, and this is the absolute crux of Professor Jiang's analysis, ultimately, it doesn't matter. Whether the leader is immensely strong or critically weak, going invisible is still the single correct move. Think about it. If he is weak, speaking publicly and having some powerful general openly ignore him would expose that weakness permanently. Silence buys him precious time. It lets him negotiate in the dark with his own factions to consolidate power long before he ever has to face an external opponent.
So, where does this totally unprecedented situation actually lead us? Well, the source material lays out a pretty clear timeline. In the near term, the next 30 days or so, expect extreme contradictions. We're talking peace talks and missile strikes happening at the exact same time. In the medium term, say 6 months out, watch for his first highly controlled public appearance, which will almost certainly be at a major shrine to maximize that theological impact. But the long term, the next decade is about watching the complete mutation of a state learning to fight a war without a visible center. The really vital takeaway from all this research is that judging a foreign power strictly through a Western lens can be a fatal strategic error. If observers use their own cultural reflexes to look at silence and automatically read it as fear, they might just bet an entire conflict on a completely false premise. You have to read them through their logic, not yours. Which brings us to the most haunting reality of this entire geopolitical crisis. As long as the true authority remains a shadow, closing out this conflict diplomatically is a near impossibility. You simply cannot end a war with a ghost. And that leaves us with one terrifying, unresolved question for the future of the Middle East, challenging us to completely rethink everything we know about statecraft. How exactly do you defeat an enemy whose most powerful weapon is their own disappearance? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time as we continue decoding the world's most complex realities.